start.
Hi there, my name is John Shelton. I am a professor at UW Opportunity Wisconsin Steering Committee member. Opportunity Wisconsin is a nonpartisan coalition of Wisconsin citizens fighting for an economy that works for all working people here in the state. Tonight, we are in front of Central Count, which is where all of Green Bay's absentee and early ballots are currently being counted, right behind me. My ballot is one of the 30,000 ballots from Green Bay inside this building. And I'm one of the thousands, the 30,000s of voters who cast our ballots by either absentee or early voting. I'm here tonight with other community members. We all want to ensure that every vote is counted before any candidate is officially declared the winner of this election. Now, 244 years ago, our nation was founded on the premise that unelected, powerful people get to make decisions for all of the people of the nation, but that we all get a chance to have an equal say in electing our leaders. Since that time, all of those Americans who were having their rightful say have fought to make their voices heard. In the 1820s and 30s, it was working men who didn't own property. In the 1860s and 70s, it was formerly enslaved African Americans. In the 19-teens and 20s, in fact, 100 years ago this year, it was women. In the 1960s, again, Americans were African Americans excluded by poll taxes and literacy tests. And in the 1970s, it was 18-year-olds who could be sent being able to vote to elect the people making the decisions to send them there. Each time we have a country, we honor the promise of American democracy, and all of those who fought to be included, and this election is no different. And through all of these times, our nation was governed by a simple principle: following the rule of law to determine the winner of the election. And our leaders, from George Washington in 1797 to Al Gore in the year 2000, agreeing to a peaceful transfer of power when their term ends or when they lose an election. As Thomas Paine said in 1776, all the way back when he wrote Common Sense, in an absolute government, the king is the law. But in a democracy, the democracy that the United States was becoming that year, the law is king. We've lived by that principle ever since, and that's what's made our nation great. So all of us are here tonight to say that no matter what candidate you support, as Americans, we can all agree that every vote counts, and we call on our leaders to count every vote. In Green Bay, we know that our democracy can only survive if every vote counts, and to do anything less would be simply un-American. So let me introduce to you our first speaker tonight, Jane Benson.
My name is Jane Benson. I'm a small business owner in Suamico, a rural community just north of Green Bay. I worked the polls there for about the last 15 years. I know firsthand how hard workers work, often from 6:30 in the morning till past midnight on the night of a presidential election. Our Suamico Village recently posted a thank you on Facebook to a number of people who came in on a Saturday to organize more than 6,200 absentee ballots to put them in alphabetical order by ward. That means 69% of our registered voters voted absentee, but not one ballot can be opened until today, November 3rd, and this is required by Wisconsin law. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down a request that Wisconsin voters be given extra time to have their ballots arrive, even if their ballots were postmarked by November 3rd. We're affected personally by the actions the current administration took to slow down mail service. We considered this to suppress our vote, but we didn't let it stop us. I took my 90-year-old mother to place her own ballot in her Ashwaubenon Hall drop box for the first time in her life. At the drop box, safe from the virus. We felt the significance of her vote. Only 10 years before she was born were white women given the right to vote. She has been a political activist all her life, but never before had she had to vote by drop box. We pulled her out of an assisted living facility in March because of the virus. The facility is now in its second round of contamination, despite trying really hard to be safe. We're grateful we can keep Mom with us, and grateful we could give her the opportunity to exercise her right to vote. Because of Mom's for protection, I am not a poll worker this year. I did help my 20-year-old know how to update his voter registration after he moved so he could go to the Suamico Village Hall confidently to update his registration and place his vote in-person absentee last week. My son texted me with pride, "I voted," the day he voted in-person absentee. My husband and I put on the Suamico Village Hall drop box. We all voted a little differently this year. All our votes matter and have the right to be counted, no matter how long it takes. Let's be patient and let the process work as designed. Better yet, when the election is over, consider how the process could be improved and work together toward a fairer process. And now the next speaker is Deb Hutchison.
Hello, it's Deb Hutchison. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I've been a voter for 40 years. Last spring, for the first time, I exercised my right to vote by voting absentee. Last spring, with the COVID dangers, I decided to plan ahead. I went on the vote.org website, followed the directions, received my ballot, filled it out, and sent it in. Pretty slick. As the spring election neared, I began to see things in the Wisconsin voting process that surprised and worried me. For example, during the initial COVID epidemic, there were pleas by Wisconsin leaders to postpone in-person voting so it would be safe for voters. That was refused. There were pleas to extend the absentee ballot deadline date so people would have time to receive their ballot in the mail and then have time to send it back in. That was refused. For many years, I had never felt that my vote counted was in any danger. Living in a white, middle-class neighborhood, I had no reason to doubt that. It was not a topic of discussion that our vote might not be counted. Sure, I knew that in the past our country had struggled with all kinds of exclusions that denied certain citizens the right to vote. I really thought that had been taken care of. But as I looked around and listened more carefully, I realized that our right to vote could be jeopardized if we are not vigilant. Our right to be heard is becoming more difficult. Here are some examples. The Supreme Court struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, stripping the Justice Department of powers it had for decades to curb racial discrimination in voting. Gerrymandering, where local leaders can carve out populations in their districts to achieve the end results that they want. Our college voting system, where the president can lose the popular vote but win the electoral vote, is another way that our votes are not. The steady drumbeat of leaders presenting the case that cheating is going on at the polls has made it impossible to vote now without our photo IDs. On the evening news, seeing footage of thousands of people in line for hours in order to vote. Every vote counts. We must be vigilant. It is heartening to see more people than ever who are turning out to vote. It is exciting to see that so many people have voted early and by mail. It's energizing to see that so many people are willing to stand in long lines today. But with so many more people voting, there needs to be more time given to count the votes fairly and justly. It just makes sense. As a nation, when we want to make sure that all voices are heard without restrictions, we need to have laws that enforce that. Clear, simple, fair laws. I voted absentee this election too. I like the ease of it. I'm grateful to have the choice. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. And I'd like to introduce Jarrett Brown.
Good evening. My name is Jarrett Brown. I'm a factory worker, activist, and voter from Green Bay, Wisconsin. First of all, I want to thank Opportunity Wisconsin for giving me the chance to speak, and I want to thank the other speakers for sharing their thoughts. They are respected members who are doing important work. I'm going to briefly tell you about myself and what has led me to be with you here tonight. Then I will talk about democracy and why we must ensure that every ballot is counted. For more than 12 years, I worked in meatpacking plants, spending almost 2 years at a meatpacking plant here in Green Bay. During those 12 years that I worked in meatpacking plants, I safety violations and violations of workers' rights. I responded by becoming a union steward and fighting to protect the rights of my coworkers and myself. Standing to companies that have massive amounts of money and power, proposition, but somebody has to do it. The way the packing plants operate was exposed for the world to see this spring when COVID-19 outbreaks ravaged the plants. The companies, government, and worker representatives failed to protect the men and women who make it possible for us to have steak dinners on special occasions and burgers on the grill with our family and friends on the weekend. The result was that thousands of workers were infected and hundreds died. Much of what happened was avoidable, but there was a lack of leadership. The people in charge didn't do their jobs, and workers paid dearly for it. When our leaders fail us, one of the ways that we in a democracy voice our dissent is by voting. For citizens, it is not only a right, but it is also a duty. It is often said that your vote is your voice. This is true, but it is also a powerful tool you can use to keep the people in charge in check. Voting results tell policymakers and politicians what the people want. The results also tell us whether we approve or disapprove of their vision or their ideas. Politicians who ignore the will of the people will eventually lose their jobs. It is inspiring to watch as millions of citizens have become engaged in our democracy by registering to vote. It has been even more inspiring to learn that registered voters are voting in record numbers. Last Thursday, I voted early in person at the clerk's office here in Green Bay. I wanted my voice to be heard. Today, I worked as a poll worker because I wanted other citizens to have their voices heard in an orderly, honest, and way. No politician, regardless of party, should try to silence citizens by allowing them to vote or by not counting their ballots. No politician should attempt to sow chaos or confusion by prematurely declaring victory. Every ballot is counted so that every voice can be heard. Please let me say that again. Every ballot must be counted so that every voice can be heard. For most of the last 130 years, the United States has been held in high regard by people around the world. We have shown that democracy brings stability and prosperity. Any attempt to subvert the will of the people is a threat to democracy and a threat to our legitimacy on the world stage. Our local officials here in Green Bay and throughout Wisconsin must do their part to protect our democracy and reputation by ensuring that every ballot is counted and every voice is heard. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. I want to thank all of our speakers. You know, if I'm getting a little emotional, it's because, partially because I'm hearing a motorcycle, but because in 1776, we had an event that was world historically important in the United States, or in the United States in the founding of this country. And our democracy is not perfect. It has its problems. We've heard some of those tonight. But what you've seen here are the strong roots of democracy in our state and in our country from these speakers tonight. In Green Bay, our love of this nation and this democracy runs deep. As you can see from everyone who has spoken here, we will stand up to protect it. And we cannot have a winner in this election until every vote has been counted. Democracy is worth the wait, and our country will be great for as long as we all do our part as Americans to uphold the democratic legacy of 1776 and 24 years that have come after it. So thank you so much, and have a good night.